here in the United States under the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program under the auspices of the Department of Energy. We have a remarkable set of people here, leaders in this project, to walk us through a little bit about the technology, a little bit about the business model and the utility angle, a little bit about the regulatory approach that's going to be taken to get this thing set up and started and successful over the next couple of years. Just one word about ClearPath. We have a broad interest in decarbonizing the US power sector, and we think that that's going to rely heavily on innovative, flexible, clean energy technologies, including advanced nuclear, among other things. We think it's extremely important that we move out of just the phase of basic and applied research at the Department of Energy and at major innovators and companies and to actual demonstrations of actual commercial scale reactors in the US to prove out that we really have designs that both our utilities and our markets here in the US can deploy, and just as importantly, that we can export those around the world. We've been very supportive of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program and are excited that they selected X-Energy as one of the first companies and designs to go through that process. So I'm really grateful today to start and kick things off by introducing Congressman Dan Newhouse. He represents Washington's 4th Congressional District and serves on the all-important Appropriations Committee, and particularly the all-important Energy and Water Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. He's a businessman. He's a former state legislator. He also chairs the very important Western Caucus in Congress, and he's really one of the best champions we have today in Congress on making smart investments in clean energy innovation. So welcome, Congressman Newhouse. Thanks for being here. Over to you for some opening remarks and thoughts.
Good. Well, thank you, Rich, and thanks for that very kind introduction. It's great to be with everyone here today, certainly. And I want to thank ClearPath for hosting what I think is a really important discussion on such a, I would call it, groundbreaking project. This partnership, the Tri-Energy Partnership, it's not only an exciting collaborative that's right here in my district in central Washington state, but it's one that I can truly say I'm very proud of. It was nearly a month ago, as you know, that I had the true honor of joining Brad and Kevin and Clay in the Tri-Cities to announce what was a very significant step forward for this demonstration project. And it's truly, I gotta say, guys, it's been truly fantastic to see the strong community support for this advanced reactor to be built right here in Washington's 4th Congressional District. People are buzzing about it. They really are. When the Department of Energy announced the recipients of the ARDP program, then I called it a game changer for the Tri-Cities. And of course, being the proud representative of Central Washington, I was excited to make that message clear. But I think you can also say that, and we should make clear that this isn't just a game changer for our region, for our part of the country, but it's what I truly believe is a game changer for the entire country, for all of the United States. And our leadership for the future of clean, carbon-free, baseload nuclear power is truly an amazing thing. Without new nuclear capabilities, I think every one of us would recognize that we simply fail to meet our shared goal of a clean energy future. Clay, you and your team at X-Energy and with your pebble bed reactor truly are at the forefront of what could be called a moonshot goal to bring this important technology to market. And we really are very proud to have you partner with our local leaders. Kevin and your team at the Grant PUD, you know what it takes to lead in the development and the distribution of reliable and carbon-free power to a growing region. And I couldn't be more thrilled and truly grateful for your courage in stepping up to the plate here and committing all of the folks that work with you to this important, truly important endeavor. And Brad and the team at Energy Northwest, obviously, you folks know what it means to be stalwart advocates for the nuclear energy. As operators of the only nuclear generating station in the Pacific Northwest, you'd have to travel multiple states before you get to another nuclear reactor that's close by. And your presence, your advocacy, and leadership in the clean energy sector is really, really key to this whole effort. And I suppose lastly, I'd be remiss not to laud the truly courageous vision espoused by the Department of Energy, our own U.S. Department of Energy, for certainly developing the ARDP, which is a groundbreaking effort that I think is going to shape the future of our nation's clean energy future. So as you can tell, I'm excited about this. I'm truly, truly delighted to be a part of this effort and helping to communicate to the rest of the country how truly groundbreaking and important this is. So with that, I'll just simply say thank you. Thank you again to ClearPath. Thank you to you, Rich, and to all of the fine folks for this important discussion that's going to be held today. And like I said, I'm truly looking forward to continuing to work with you. And I'm pledged to do everything within my power to help move this effort forward. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Rich.
Well, thank you so much for that terrific introduction, Congressman. And it should be said that the Department of Energy has been a fantastic leader on this program, and the program was first conceptualized by the Appropriations Committee in the FY20 spending bill. And so, just a huge thanks to you and to all of the Appropriations Committee, but bipartisan, bicameral support for this, I think, to get this program started and going. So thank you again for your leadership and for the leadership of all your colleagues there on the committee.
Thank you.
Well, I'm now going to quickly go through and introduce our terrific panel of discussants and leaders in this project, and then we'll go to some questions first from me, and then from the audience. And folks can actually start right now if you have questions and want to go ahead and insert them into the Q&A function. We'll keep track of those and start to move through those as quickly as we can. So on that terrific panel, first we have Clay Sell. He's the CEO of X Energy. Previously, Clay was the president of Hunt Energy Horizons, a subsidiary of Hunt Consolidated. He also spent 14 years in the U.S. government, most recently as the Deputy Secretary of Energy in the George W. Bush administration. So he knows a little bit something about public-private partnerships and getting these things up and running and delivered. Next, we're going to have Brad Sawatsky. He's the CEO of Energy Northwest. Prior to joining Energy Northwest, he was the Director of Site Operations at Prairie Island Nuclear Generating Plant with Xcel Energy, and spent nearly 30 years at the Monticello Nuclear Generating Plant before that. Brad knows a thing or two about running nuclear reactors very successfully. And last, but certainly not least, we have Kevin Nort. He's the General Manager and CEO of Grant County Public Utility District, where he served since 2004. He spent his career in the Northwest in a variety of engineering, marketing, trading, and operations positions, including for Portland General Electric and Energy Northwest. So thank you all so much for being here and joining us. Clay, I'm going to turn things over first to you. Can you just give us a little background on this? Can you provide a quick overview of the XE100 reactor design and X Energy's plans to demonstrate the design through the ARDP, which is a 50-50 cost share with the Department of Energy and X Energy?
Thanks, Rich. And I would be remiss if I didn't quickly pile on to the thanks. I really appreciate ClearPath bringing us together today. I thank you for the important role that ClearPath has played in the last few years, shaping the environment that created the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. I agree, it was really a visionary leadership coming out of the Congress. A Democrat-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate initially that conceived this and formed it and really gave it, the power. And then, quite frankly, the Department of Energy, I think, has done a fabulous job getting the RFP out, getting it executed, and getting going. So I'm very, very appreciative of the tremendous policy support that we've received from all elements of the government. So we're going to demonstrate our XE100 module at X Energy. And the XE100 technology is high temperature gas cooled reactor. And our standard design is a single module that is a gas reactor. Helium is the heat transfer fluid. It takes the heat from the reactor to a steam generator to produce 200 megawatt thermal of steam. Our fuel form is ceramic encapsulated fuel known as triso fuel in a pebble like this, approximately the size of a cue ball, that flows continuously through the reactor core that gives us, continuous refueling of the reactor. In the case of our demonstration with Energy Northwest in Grant County, we're going to build our commercial variant, which is actually 4 XE100 reactors, 4 steam generators, 4 turbine gen sets that are all in an optimized configuration with a common control room, common fresh fuel, spent fuel infrastructure, common switchyard. That is our optimized commercial plant, which produces 320 megawatt electric. We're thrilled to be partnered in this effort as the Tri-Energy partnership with Grant County, which we anticipate to be the ultimate owner of the project. In Energy Northwest, we're going to use their site. Energy Northwest, we contemplate to be the operator of the project, and X-Energy will be the provider of the technology and the provider of the fuel. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to demonstrate this project in conjunction with both Grant County and Energy Northwest, and quite frankly, in true partnership with the federal government, which will be providing 50% of the funding for this project.
Clay, let me just ask you, so policy has been very important to get you here to this point. Obviously, we want to get to the point where this is just, fully commercially demonstrated and viable and standing on its own 2 feet. What else do we need to get there? What else do we need to make sure it's not just a terrific demonstration of one or of 4 reactors, one site here, but to get this to a fully kind of commercially viable structure going forward?
I think a lot of the policies have been put in place. I think it's really incumbent upon now for the private sector to respond to that, execute and deliver. And that's what we're intensely focused on at X-Energy for a long-term sustainable effort, which we all anticipate to create. I mean, we at X-Energy did not get into this business to build a demonstration reactor. We got into this business to sell hundreds and hundreds of commercial plants in the United States, in Canada, and around the world. One thing that we really need, one of the big missing pieces that we don't have today, is a viable commercial scale producer of high assay, low enriched uranium. So the higher enrichments that we use in the XE100 plant, and quite frankly, that most advanced reactors use. So there are some exciting developments underway, particularly with the Centrus demonstration, which will go into operation next year to begin producing high assay LEU. But that's a full-scale commercial viable production of HALEU is the next challenge that we will look to address in the coming years.
Terrific. Thanks, Clay. We'll be back to you, I'm sure. Brad, I'm going to go to you next. Can you tell us a little bit about Energy Northwest? As Congressman Newhouse mentioned, you operate the Columbia Generating Station. Can you tell us a little bit about your role in nuclear in the Northwest and why you're thinking about, more nuclear? What's driving this decision?
Absolutely, Rich. I'd like to first, I got to start too with my thank yous. I also want to recognize the Department of Energy and the work they've done to make this possible. Congressman Newhouse, I think, stepped off, but I got to tell you, we're very fortunate to have someone like him in our district, someone who's out there forward thinking, providing that support. And certainly, Rich, you and the team of ClearPath, the work you're doing to help move this forward, we're very, very grateful. Thanks for setting us up today. So, a couple of years ago, Rich, when the legislation was working through Washington State, it was called CETA, Clean Energy Transformation Act. And they've been trying for several years to get legislation passed out of Olympia. And the key was previously they'd always said it had to be 100% renewable. That was always the legislation was trying to drive for 100% renewables. So a couple of years ago, we went over and spent a lot of time in Olympia talking to both sides of the aisle about the fact that, listen, at Energy Northwest, and by the way, we are a company that has a carbon-free footprint. That is in our nature. That's who we are. We believe in it. We believe in that carbon-free footprint. But we went over to talk to them and say, listen, we're aligned with you. We have the same goals here to reduce this carbon, to get rid of it. But we need to understand, we don't believe the science supports being able to do it on 100% renewables. You can pass the legislation, you'll feel good about it, but in the end, it's something you'll never be able to implement, okay? You need that base load, as we all know on this call. You need that 24/7 base load. So in the end, it was interesting. Behind closed doors, I got a lot of, we understand nuclear needs to be part of it. I couldn't get him to walk out front in front of a microphone though and say nuclear needs to be part of it. But what we did get in the legislation is technology neutral. Any technology that's carbon free will fit into the future. So there was a win for nuclear. It was the recognition that they understood we need base load 24/7 to support the transmission system. So really after the legislation was passed, then we started thinking about, okay, what is this going to mean to the future? How do we support making this successful? And we had a study conducted by a group known as E3, and they did a lot of work. As I always tell people, quite honestly, it's a study, Rich, any of us could have did it on the back of an envelope. If I'm going to retire several gigawatts of electricity, guess what? I'm going to need something to replace it. But in the end, what it came up with is, quite honestly, by 2045, when you have full implementation of carbon-free, up to potentially 8 gigawatts of electricity that's going to be needed to replace that carbon footprint as it gets as we start moving that out. And by the way, the coal plants up in the Northwest will start to be transitioning out by the mid 2020s. So, and the legislation in Washington State, by the way, is not only just that you can't build or have carbon producers in Washington State, you will not be able to bring electrons into the state that have been generated by carbon, regardless if it was in another state or not. So we need to look as to how we're going to manage this. So this got us thinking, as you know, we're a joint action agency. We've got 27 members. That's what Energy Northwest is. We're made up of 27, mostly public utility districts like Kevin's, a few large cities. So we started thinking about what are our members going to need as the carbon goes away? How can we support them to make sure that the electricity is there and they can depend on it? So 2 years ago already, we started looking at what's the role for nuclear and what are our options and working with our members to make it happen. Well, back a year ago, and this ARDP process came out very timely. Not surprisingly, we heard from a number of people who are interested in working with us. As you know, the submittal required a utility along with the designer, and we had several people reach out to us. Clay and X Energy spent a lot of time talking to us, and the fact of the matter is, we loved what we heard. We loved the product. We thought we loved the innate safety that's built into it, and frankly, we think the product is one that absolutely is going to lead us into the future. So we agreed to go to the submittal with them. And as it turned out, obviously we were accepted. At that point, we became, as we were working in the background, okay, talking to our joint action agency members about any interest in the electricity. And Kevin and his team were very proactive right up front and came and said, we'd be interested in a large piece of the offtake. And when you get a chance to hear from Kevin, you'll hear why. Grant County is incredibly forward thinking. They got some opportunities coming, and Kevin and his team are very, very proactive about how do we go after that. But anyhow, and it went from Kevin saying, maybe we'd like a big chunk of the offload, to saying, you know what, maybe we'd like to just be the owners and we'll control it. We think we have a need and we can manage with the other members and making it happen. So we're extremely excited. This is really how the three-way partnership came about. As I said, we've got a carbon-free footprint in Energy Northwest. We run 5 hydros. We've got 100 megawatts wind. We believe in renewables. We just opened a solar project with storage. We believe in all of those things, but we know that base load is going to be a necessity to be successful. So that's what got us down this path. And I got to tell you, Rich, we are incredibly optimistic. If this is going to get done, I talked to Undersecretary Menzies last fall when we were involved in this, and he said the same thing, that we believe at Energy Northwest, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen in the Northwest. We've got the need through legislation. We got a governor in the Washington State who has said nuclear needs to be part of the solution to fix the environment. And we've got proactive people like Kevin out there saying, how can we get it done?
It's a great alignment. Brad, I just one follow-up for you. Can you say a little bit about, you've got a ton of experience with the Columbia Generating Station. You personally have a lot of experience operating plants. What, if anything, are the synergies you expect to see with X Energy? And great, thanks for adjusting that. I think we heard you well when you're looking dead on.
I apologize. Yeah, I got.
Yeah, no problem. We can hear you well now.
One of my team members texted me. So good. Is this better? Is this better?
That's great. Yep.
Okay, good, excellent. What are the synergies? Yeah, thank you. I forgot to mention when I talked about our carbon-free footprint, the crown jewel, our 1,200 megawatt electric Columbia generating station, big boiling water reactor. So, over the last 10 years, I'm very proud. If you look at Columbia generating station, we've set year after year of generating records, while year after year, we've lowered our cost to the Northwest. So it's a decades worth of track record of increased production at a lower cost. So we think the team that we've built that's made that happen, all the skill sets that they brought to bear for those improvements to Columbia Generating Station are exactly what you need when it comes to developing and operating and maintaining a new nuclear station, plain and simple. And we bring to the table, as you know, we had 2 sites previously licensed that through the 70s Washington Public Power System did not get finished. So we've got 2 sites that are previously licensed right next to Columbia. The infrastructure is there, the transmission is there, the water with the Columbia River is there. And hey, by golly, we're on the Hanford site. We are where this all started. We see this as a continuation of our legacy in the Tri-Cities. And Congressman talked about the support from the local community. It's off the chart. If they had their way, we'd be turning a shovel on Monday. I kid you not. They just every day they want to get out and start digging. So I see our experience with our company in improving the performance of Columbia Generating Station as being vital to our ability to operate this new technology and do it economically and safely. And I see our history and the support we have from our local community, once again, reinforcing the fact we are the right place to make this happen in our country.
Great. Thanks so much. And what a great, next step. What a great next step, next chapter for the Tri-Cities and that area on advanced nuclear energy and continuing the innovation. Kevin, last but not least, we're going to come to you for sort of an introductory remarks. Can you tell us a little bit about Grant County PUD? Clearly, you've got a legacy with baseload and flexible clean energy resources. Brad told us a little bit. Tell us more. Why are you diving into advanced nuclear here?
Sure. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about Grant. Both our legacy and what we see coming forward. I too, though, just want to start off by thanking you, Rich, and everybody at ClearPath for the opportunity to be part of this. Congressman Newhouse has been a fabulous supporter. We've talked about the Tri-Cities. Grant is just a little north, and we're all right there in Congressman Newhouse's district, and can't thank him for the support enough. And then, of course, my partners, Energy Northwest and X Energy, and personally Brad and Clay. It is a friendship and a partnership that I think is going to go really far. And of course, we couldn't do it without the U.S. Department of Energy. So, with that, I'll share just a little bit about Grant. And I'll kind of start with Grant's the little utility that could. If we look back before really major hydro development, and I'm talking major nuclear plant, traditional nuclear plant scale dams and powerhouses occurred on the Columbia River. There was some by the federal government. And, there was little Grant at the time with a clear vision and can-do sense. And they made happen developing both the Priest Rapids Dam on the order of 1,000 megawatts and Wanapum Dam, which is a little north of 1,100. So, we operate those 2 large structures, each of them about 1.5 miles or more across. They are pretty large scale, and they are Formula One race cars. Right, so they are poised for a highly intermittent, flexible future, and we have been leaders in providing those services back from the earliest days of sea and wind here and then solar into the area. But like I said, Grant is kind of a can-do type utility. We're out here, Central Washington, just north of the Tri-Cities. It started out with an agricultural base. The Grand Coulee Columbia Basin project is really what set Grant up, and it started with some of the heaviest agriculture in the country. And, that continued to develop. Food processing started to develop. And Grant also, saw a lot of benefit in encouraging retail load growth, and some industrial growth started to come. Around 2005, we really saw the benefits to our core customers, to the utility, and to the area overall by, embracing growth and moving forward. And we have, what I would say is a true growth miracle. We have, I would say, arguably been the fastest, if not the fastest, in the top 2 or 3 growing utilities, not just for the last couple of years, but every year for the last 15. And we're looking out the next 5, 10, 12 years and seeing continued growth. We've grown on average about 4% a year since 2005, which is just staggering in their industry. And we're looking at rates that are probably between 4 to 5, 6% a year going forward. So, we've got some really tremendous resources. They gave us tremendous service, and they still do. But like anything, you grow and you start to exhaust those capabilities. So, we want to keep the growth miracle going. We see a lot of promise in nuclear. And when the opportunity, to partner came along, we wanted to jump all over it. I found my team through integrated resource planning was, necking down to nuclear. We need firm, dependable capacity. We see a lot of benefits in solar, wind, et cetera. But we know for what we need, that firm, dependable capabilities got to be there. Our customers want carbon-free power. That's been one of the things that's always been a legacy of us. We've been carbon-free for 60 plus years, and we want to continue that legacy. So as we were exploring it, and then Brad's team was exploring it, we were a founding member of Energy Northwest. We have been great partners with them for many, many decades. And we said, let's look at doing this together. It quickly became obvious that, we had comparative strengths, and they were very complementary. Grant's wholesale experience, its marketing experience, the fact we've got a growing retail load, those capabilities. What we bring as a balancing area transmission operator, coupled with their skills on the nuclear side, was just really a great combo. And then when we had the opportunity through the ARDP to team up, we jumped all over it. So we see this as really positioning us well for the next number of decades to continue the growth and, capture that pioneering spirit.
Kevin, you got to be the envy of the country and utility executives everywhere. An actual growing, load. It's a really different situation than most of the country has. Let's just talk for a second about that growth. What are your main drivers? And you mentioned your customers want carbon-free. You've always been carbon-free. What do your customers think about this, about adding, new nuclear, in your case, really for the first time?
So, our customers, I think in general, are pretty supportive. Of course, they want to understand all the facts, and we will, work our way very diligently. Much as we've done with other things, we're very methodical, and we don't take a calculated risk, but, we know our customers are looking for stable, predictable outcomes, clean power, continue the legacy of low cost power. Here on the Mid-Columbia, we, with a couple of our brethren utilities, have been arguably the lowest rates in the country. And that's what attracted folks, clean power at very low rates. We have wide open spaces, and again, a can-do spirit here. We can get things built. We've got tremendous data center presence now across the spectrum of areas. We've got clean tech, light manufacturing, and all in all, I think the understanding that a decarbonized world is going to result in a lot of load growth. As Brad mentioned, out here in the Northwest, we are seeing a lot of dependable capacity get shuttered. And, as we look forward, not just the next couple of years or 5 years, thinking long term, this looks like, if we can manage the risks, which I think we will be able to, that, this can provide very clean, stable, predictable, and relatively low cost power to blend into what's already a pretty phenomenal portfolio. So I think our customers will be supportive. We're in the early stages, and we'll be working really closely with them.
Kevin, let me just ask you one last question on that. What are those key points to de-risk this for you? What are those key milestones that you're going to need to show and to prove, to your customers, more broadly in your IRP process and all that? What are you going to need to check off to make sure that this is a success?
Sure. So, there's a whole host of factors as you develop any type of power resource. But I think the two biggest ones are, of course, the licensing process and the ability to effectively license. And then second, we're dealing with new technology, right? So that always, brings a question. I think the first on the licensing is the bigger question. I feel very confident we can get our arms around the technology risk. Certainly the ARDP goes a long way to help de-risk around the cost side and bearing some of those risks. But I think right now for us, sort of the first order item that we are working to make sure we have a clear path on, and that it doesn't drive the ultimate outcome, really is a clear path to getting the project licensed. And we absolutely understand nuclear safety. While Grant as an entity has not owned or operated a nuclear plant before, myself and a number of us come with nuclear experience. We fully understand nuclear safety and certainly would not at all be looking to cut any corners there. But we do need a solid path on a certainty to licensing. That is probably the single biggest thing.
A clear path to licensing. I'll take it. I could not resist. So we've got Q&A flowing into the function, primarily from the ever reliable Mr. Adams. Thank you. And Rod, we'll get to some of these questions here in a second. Clay, I'm going to come back to you and just ask a little bit more about this big question of de-risking. Clearly we've got a mixed record on demonstrating new advanced reactors in this country. We just need to be, clear-eyed about that. You, maybe more than anybody, with your leadership of the next generation nuclear program, have thought a lot about this, especially with the high temperature gas reactor space. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about de-risking this thing and making sure that we're really successful this time? Oh, you are still on mute, Clay.
Thanks, Rich. I'm as intimately aware of the department's history on demonstrating large projects as anyone you can find. And so we enter into this project and this process with tremendous humility about the task in front of us and how we're going to approach it. I will say, I think you just heard from my two partners, we could not dream of a better set of partners and a better commercial environment and a better community environment to pursue this project in than what we have in Grant County, Energy Northwest in the state of Washington. And we are the beneficiaries at X Energy of a tremendous amount of work done by the Next Generation Nuclear Plant Project and the Advanced Gas Reactor Project at the Department of Energy over the last 15 years. A number of regulatory issues were identified for high temperature gas cooled reactors and resolved through that process. Our fuel, the TRISO-based fuel that we use in our reactor, a substantial amount of work was done. A significant qualification pedigree was developed. And so we're now in a position of just doing confirmatory irradiation and qualification of our fuel. We're well down the path on fuel qualification. And then we at X Energy, and now in partnership with Energy Northwest in Grant County, have an extensive pre-application regulatory engagement program with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And so in the last few months and going forward over the course of the next half dozen or 8 months, we will file 10 additional white papers and limited topical reports to really get engagement with the NRC, to identify the key issues, to narrow down the sets of key issues so that when we make our construction license application in the first part of next year, we will have materially and significantly reduced the questions on the regulatory risk going forward. That's important for us. It's important for the Department of Energy. Certainly, it's important for our expected ultimate owner in Grant County.
Brad, let me come back to you now. So Kevin mentioned some of the key points he's looking to de-risk as well. From your perspective, from Energy Northwest perspective, what are the key challenges here beyond what Kevin and Clay have already mentioned?
Yeah, well, I think they did a great job of covering it. I'm not sure if beyond, I will say this, the one thing we didn't talk about is what's the political climate and, the climate of the citizens in the Northwest. And what we've seen is a change, plain and simple. What we've seen in particular is a number of environmental groups who historically really weren't interested in nuclear being part of the solution. I think I've come to understand that if we're going to actually decarbonize, and if that is our main priority, then nuclear needs to be part of that solution. Whether they like it or not, that may be different. But the fact is, I think they're becoming more and more to an understanding that this can't happen without that base load there. So from that perspective, I think we've made a lot of headway. And as I noted earlier, getting it through Congress in Olympia with nuclear allowed as part of it was a huge step, showing that people are looking at this differently. Now, having said that, I'm not a fool. Okay, I'm not a fool. I get it's not going to be 100%. We already, we'll see a one-off here and there where right away it's like, okay, well, it's just like the Washington public power system, right? And when the challenges that happened back there. And so I think from our perspective, one of the risks is making sure that we manage this, if you will. Clearly, it needs to be understood that the technology today is a different technology than what the industry has used historically. The footprint that comes with that, and helping educate people as to why, not only just why is it more innately safe, but also, if you will, at the scaled back footprint that's associated with it, just the sheer number of moving parts and all the things that go into it from an economic perspective, helping educate people on that. And then, clearly, sending the message that what happened 50 years ago, quite honestly, has nothing to do with what's going on today and who we are as a company and how we're going to manage that. And I think getting the environmental groups, having them on our side is going to go a long way to help making that message work. And so that's the risk. The one risk that hasn't been mentioned that we're looking at is we're monitoring the temperature, if you will, of the people in Northwest and Washington State and making sure we are there and ready to help educate and build that support around us. So that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're just in a fascinating position, Brad. I mean, you're sort of a picture of the future, right? Washington State is already so clean. You're already facing that last, 20%, 10% challenge that so much of the rest of the country is sort of talking about academically, but we're far off of getting to where you are today. And so
you're absolutely right. We're blessed with the hydro. Obviously, it starts right there. We're blessed with the hydro that no one else in the country has that options that we have there. So it starts that we've got a great fundamental base with the hydro that's there. And then certainly there's been a significant build out of renewables, solar and wind. And as I noted earlier, we're part of that. But what everyone still needs to understand, even when it comes to hydro, as the year goes on and winter rolls around, the water's not running as much as it was earlier. And that's where that base load comes in.
Clay, I'm going to come back to you. You mentioned earlier, X-Energy's ambition goes well beyond a demonstration reactor. You want to build hundreds of these things. I have a hope for thousands of these things, both here in the United States and around the world. Can you say a little bit more about particularly, global or even, broader U.S. interest in this? What does the potential order book look like? What has y'all confident enough to, make investments in this first demonstration?
Well, Rich, we have a view at X-Energy, which I used to say is different from the conventional wisdom, although I will confess that I think the conventional wisdom is catching up with us quite quickly. We see this tremendous global growth of energy demand over the next 30 years. And quite frankly, in our book, the debate on decarbonization is over. Everyone recognizes that we have to decarbonize. Every utility in the United States has made decarbonization, announced targets. The market is being really aggressively shaped in Washington State, less so in other regions. But the need to decarbonize, that debate is over. Now it's all about the tactics of how to do that most efficiently. So we see, Brad identified 8 gigawatts of potential demand in Washington State alone. Now, I'm not saying all of that's going to go to X-Energy, but that is a significant need just in one state in the union. And you see that picture repeated throughout various regions in the United States. North of the border, we have a Canadian company. We're aggressively engaged in the Canadian market. OPG, Ontario Power Generation, intends to build an advanced reactor on the Darlington site on Lake Ontario by 2028. So just 1 year beyond the target completion date of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. And there is significant follow-on opportunity in Canada. So that's just, those are the two regions where we're presently engaging the regulator, the USNRC in the US and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission in Canada. But beyond that, there is enormous demand and opportunity in Eastern Europe. You look at a country like Poland that has a heavily coal-based fleet. They're trying to compete in the European Union. Their industrial manufacturers are suffering under carbon tariffs due to that heavy coal fleet. So there's a tremendous opportunity in Eastern Europe. And then you can go around the world, Southwest Asia, the Gulf region. We've already seen what happened, what the UAE has done. They have 4 more sites and they are thinking about where they're going to go next. Similarly, in Southeast Asia, those are all opportunities that are imminent. That's before we even start talking about what's happening in the African continent or in South America. So I've talked before about the International Energy Agency's estimate of 340 gigawatts of new nuclear that will be required by 2040 just to maintain global temperatures at 2 degrees C. That gives you a sense of the order of magnitude of the total addressable market that's available for the advanced reactor community. And that's why we are confident that by demonstrating our reactor technology with these 2 great partners at Energy Northwest, in Richland, Washington, by 2027, and demonstrating that we can deliver this in an appropriate period of time, and we're talking about less than 5 years, and at a cost well below $60 per megawatt hour. First to market, delivery in less than 5 years at a cost of well below $60 per megawatt hour. We believe once we show that that can be done, the world will beat a path to our door, and we will build hundreds and hundreds of these plants around the world. That's our view at X Energy.
Clay, thanks. You brought us to that all-important point on economics, and we had a number of questions come in the Q&A about, what y'all expected that to come in at. Turning to Kevin and Brad on that question of economics, what can you say? Realizing you may not be able to say everything. What can you say about CapEx, about the expected cost to the power, and how's this model going to work? People are trying to understand if this is going to be, if the region's under a sort of a traditional PUC regulated rate base framework, is that how this is going to proceed?
So this is Brad. If it's okay, I'll go quickly first. Kevin's got a lot more knowledge and depth on this, and he'll take us through it. But from an anecdotal perspective, you're spot on about the economics. I've talked about prior to COVID coming into play, I had spent a lot of time again on the West Side meeting with businesses, business peoples and groups, and talking about the decarbonizing and nuclear's role in decarbonizing and all that. And as I always tell the story, what's really interesting about that at the end is everybody be absolutely right, Brad, we're aligned. We got to fix the environment. We got to decarbonize. Just so you know, it can't cost me 1 more penny though on my rates. And it's like, I'd come back with, well, that's not going to happen. That's not possible. As I always say, if you think wrecking the environment's cost free, I got news for you. But the fact of the matter is you are right. In the end, the big determiner here is going to be economic. When it's all said and done, this has got to be in a way that people believe it is economically reasonable. So you're spot on in that challenge, and we know that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin because he's much deeper into this than I am. So I think you've got a lot of great information.
Okay, thanks, Brad. So yeah, ultimately this will turn on economics. So as I said, what pointed us this way was our integrated resource planning work, and we focus there, like many utilities, on a price and risk focus. And at the end of the day, I think you think about this from sort of a risk-adjusted return on capital type of approach. The way we're analyzing the project at Grant is, from a sort of real options perspective. So as we look forward, this has got to win on the merits. We're excited about it, but the excitement about the technology and that, is put aside. And it's a pretty dispassionate look at looking at both what long-term costs are going to be, what the associated risks may be, and we'll just leave where Clay said, sub $60. If you think about then the characteristics of this, clean power. If you take what are absolutely falling costs with wind, solar, et cetera, but figuring out also what the integration costs are going to be, backup capacity to make sure that you have the firming, the transmission, et cetera. You start getting into some pretty good head-to-head competition. And then also when we're looking at this and thinking long-term, which is, I think it's one of the things, and I'll get to where you asked about, is it a traditional rate of return model, et cetera, is, looking at this from a planning horizon that gives you a pretty nice amortization period and gives you the opportunity for stable costs well into the future. And again, we understand technology risk. There could be operational issues. That's not anything we take lightly. But when you put that together, given that other types of technologies, you may have to do 2 or 3 times on an equivalent basis, where you might be 60-year license here, those end effects can make a huge difference. I think one of the things that is right for us is the Northwest does tend to still operate in sort of a traditional, structure, rate of return with state regulators, et cetera. But public power, I think, brings some clear advantages to this type of, exploration, because we are regulated by a board of commissioners who are elected and accountable to the people. These are folks from the community, of the community, for the community, by the community. And, they certainly don't want to take imprudent risk. They don't want to see anything that's going to jeopardize, where they live and, what they have built up over their careers, right? But with that allows a degree of flexibility where we can make decisions on behalf of our local constituents, which is really a pretty good model in many ways. The local control model of public power has got a lot to say for it. But, it really then comes down to, if we look at the public utility district here and say, effectively our customers and our owners, our shareholders are the same. So let's align their interests, and we don't have to worry about any kind of triangulation. And we can really look at this as most business would then, on a risk adjusted basis. Is the return sufficient to achieve the goals our customers seek, which is clean, stable, predictable power that together with our existing portfolio will get them what they want, not just for 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. As Brad said, the notion that, hey, this is all great, but I don't want to see my rates go up, a penny or something, that's just not realistic. If you are going to grow, if you're going to add resources, there's always going to be a marginal cost. The days of decreasing long run marginal costs are long behind us. However, the question then gets to be, what is the best choice? And what we're seeing right now is this is a really strong contender for the best choice.
Huge thanks, Kevin. So we've been entirely focused on electricity here. The interesting thing about a high temperature reactor is we can have conversations that go well beyond the electricity sector. As an organization sort of focused on global decarbonization and climate change, that means we also have to be concerned about heavy industry, and indeed we are. Heat is a gigantic driver of greenhouse gas emissions around the world. Clay, can you say a little bit about, is this near horizon? Is this far horizon? What could the XE100 do in terms of high temperature, clean thermal? And, is that anywhere on the near horizon, supplying that to industry?
It is on the near horizon, Rich. And when you just think about it from a big picture standpoint, decarbonization is not simply going to apply to the transportation sector and the electric generation sector. it will be extended into the industrial process heat sector. Now that's 25% of global energy consumption today. And that 25% is 90+% fueled with fossil fuels. So there's an enormous decarbonization need in the industrial process heat sector. Here's what we love about our technology. Number one, because of the safety case of our fuel and how that relates to, and the containment included in that fuel, that allows us to have a very small emergency planning zone for our plant. Furthermore, our physical footprint of our plant is much smaller relative to a traditional light water reactor. And so we believe our technology is ideal. In fact, I maintain our technology is the most ideal for process heat applications, not in a 4-pack, but maybe just a single unit or 2 units in a petrochemical facility, in an ammonia plant, in a hydrogen production facility, in a desalination plant. The use cases and applications for this technology are immense. And the very reactor that we are licensing at the US NRC and that we are demonstrating in the Tri-Cities, that reactor, you take the turbine genset off and you just use the steam that's coming out. That is the exact reactor that we would seek to deploy in these industrial process heat environments. So we are quite bullish on the role that nuclear will play and the role that X energy specifically will play to decarbonize the process heat sector.
Thinking about actually building this thing, in DC, we're knee deep in conversations about global supply chains, the risks of global supply chains, particularly coming from geopolitical competitors, how we bring jobs and manufacturing, especially advanced manufacturing, back to the United States. Can y'all talk a little bit just about components and supply chains? And I imagine y'all have thoughts about this. Maybe Clay, starting with you. How much of this are you going to be able to source from U.S. supply chains, and what can we do in the future to make sure that whatever that answer is more in the future?
Obviously, or perhaps not obviously, but I will tell you we're well advanced in all of our supply chain discussions. We're at that stage of the project. We really think of the supply chain as a North American supply chain. A lot of it is south of the border. A significant amount of it is north of the border in Canada. And there are some key supply chain partners overseas that we are using as part of our development effort. That's just a reality of the nuclear industry today. But there's a number of things that are interesting. Our design, again, as a function of our safety case, is quite simple and quite elegant. So we have 1/10 of the components and subsystems in our plant than what you would find in a traditional light water reactor plant. Furthermore, we have many fewer systems that are safety related or safety significant that have to be procured from a nuclear qualified supply chain. So our ability to procure components from commercial off-the-shelf suppliers that are not necessarily nuclear qualified for a lot of our systems give us more flexibility in how we address supply chain issues. So number one, we like where we are today, but certainly we see an immense opportunity to build out a new U.S. nuclear industry. And quite frankly, there's a lot of capability in the Tri-Cities region, and we look forward to starting that next generation of the nuclear supply chain in the Tri-Cities of Washington.
Yeah, this is Brad. I'll pile on to that. Clay got to the point at the end from our perspective. One of the reasons people are so excited about this in the Tri-Cities is not just the actual reactor itself getting built, but very clearly the Tri-City Development Council, who I'm a member of, They have their eyes on what other roles can they fill for being a supplier somewhere in the future as this technology takes off. And Clay's dream comes true to sell 1,000 of these. The people in the Tri-Cities want to be the ones who are doing the major manufacturing and making that happen. I mean, we've got the infrastructure available. Once again, you start the Columbia River to move things out to sea if you so desire, and then we've got everything from incredible crane manufacturers as part of it, and machinists, and you name it, it's all there in the cities. And they're excited about getting the reactor built, but I will tell you, they got their eyes on much more than that. So we're looking for opportunities.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that you know, I always kind of like to broaden it out to central Washington, because I think there'll be plenty to go around for the Tri-Cities. But up here, you know, in Grant, Moses Lake area in particular, you know, we have a long history. And as I said, you know, with the growth up here, the workforce, the ability to manufacture, et cetera, the nuclear ecosystem and what that has down in the Tri-Cities coupled with our capabilities. And again, we're literally neighbors. So, you know, we see this as, yeah, we're excited about the reactor build to meet our, you know, energy supply needs, but just as excited to see, you know, Clay and X Energy become one of our growing loads and some of their, you know, suppliers as well. And there'll be plenty for the utility down in, you know, Brad's area too. So I think for the whole region here, but particularly between the capabilities up in Grant County and the nuclear capabilities in the Tri-Cities, it's a really great opportunity to get a foothold for the U.S. and manufacturing.
Okay, we only have a couple of minutes left. We're going to do a lightning round based on a couple of the questions that have come in that we haven't been able to get answered yet. Whoever wants to answer these questions, go ahead. First, you mentioned, I mean, the unique pebble bed design lets you do continuous refueling, but how often do you typically get to operate these things between shutdowns to inspect components and whatnot? Is it different than a light water reactor?
We anticipate availability in the 90 to 95% range.
And I just quick add to that, you know, as the utility off-taker, 4 shafts, you know, lets you, you know, continue to take power and the flexibility to shut off. So, you know, in a world where you see low market prices, negative market prices, the inherent flex in this coupled with, you know, that refueling advantage is just tremendous.
And so you can run at base load 90-95%. Can you describe a little bit more about the flexibility to, you know, say, you know, back up you know, seasonal or intermittent renewables?
From a technology standpoint, we can do load following with each of the reactor's turbine gen sets, and we can go from 100% power down to 40% power at 5% drop per minute. So there's a lot of flexibility. And again, that's you know, with 4 different units. Obviously, you know, the preference is with an investment like this to run it as much as you can. But having that flexibility to load follow and match renewables is, I think, a really distinguishing attribute, which will prove to be important as we deploy more of these units.
Yeah, I'll say that the ability to integrate is what we're looking at with our renewables, both in our own company, Energy Northwest, and throughout Washington State. And I know Kevin's got did a lot of thinking about the flexibility. Kevin, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, so I was just going to add, you know, the effective option that's embedded into this kind of technology, right? You have the right to run it baseload, but not the obligation. And that's a huge game changer from the future, right? So, you know, generally, you know, yeah, you want to be making megawatt hours in the low, you know, marginal cost is great. But, you know, if the market sub your variable cost, you know, the ability to shut off and maybe even get paid to take energy is huge. And so again, the flexibility here is really, really important. And one of the biggest things with this technology is the right, but not the obligation to have baseload. And that is a pretty valuable option.
Okay, one last lightning round question. When do you anticipate submitting that NRC application, both for the XE100 and for the fuel fabrication facility?
We anticipate for the fuel fabrication facility, and I will add, the first phase of our commercial fuel facility to manufacture TRISO fuel is part of our ARDP proposal. So that will be covered. 50% of that cost will also be covered by the program. We anticipate making our Part 70 license application in the third quarter of this year. So a tremendous amount of work is going on the fuel side. It's under the radar. It's run by our great leader, Pete Papano. We call him No Drama Papana because it just keeps rocking along. And so that's going to happen in the third quarter this year. And we anticipate a construction license application in the first half of next year. Let me state the obvious. The schedule contemplated by the ARDP program was aggressive. We acknowledge that. I think my partners acknowledge that. But I will tell you this, exceeding expectations is in the DNA of X-Energy. It's been the story of our 11 years existence. And so it is an aggressive schedule. We are working it. We believe it's a doable schedule. But the most important thing is we're going to work in complete partnership with Grant County and Energy Northwest and the Department of Energy to do this in the best way, to do this in the smartest way, to accomplish the objectives of the U.S. government and our industry through a successful demonstration program, whatever that takes.
Fantastic. That brings us to the top of the hour, so we're going to have to wrap. Last question. If folks want to learn more about X and the specific design, or generally about the partnership, where are the best places for them to go to find more information?
I'd say website for us, Energy Northwest website, and also that can direct you to our public affairs group. Jason Herbert, I know, who's going to be leading the new nuclear communications, and has actually put together a group from the Tri-Cities to be out there, if you will, championing this and communicating. So that for Energy Northwest, go to our website, get to our public affairs group, and Jason, he certainly can help you with that information relative to what we see our role in our partnership as part of the partnership.
Outstanding. Well, hey, thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. Thanks for your leadership on making this project a reality. We are extremely excited about it at ClearPath. And thanks to everybody who joined in both here on the Zoom and on the streaming channel. Thanks so much, and look forward to sharing more about this exciting project with y'all over time. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon.